strategist, Scott Tranter, head of data science for our partners at Decision Desk HQ. Gentlemen, Kurt, just help me understand this. Quote, work requirements don't make people work more.
I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Okay, listen.
Well, I get what he's trying to say. It just doesn't pass the smell test, does it?
Well, I think that what doesn't pass the smell test to me is the idea that we're going to solve one crisis by creating a completely different one, because what's also a part of this Republican proposal is something that would create a major healthcare crisis in America by taking 21 million Americans off of Medicaid. You can't. It is 21 million. You cannot do these requirements and then expect.
How is it fair? Answer me this when we get to the polling in a second. How is it fair that all of us who pay taxes are subsidizing the health care and food stamps of people who are able-bodied and able to work, but are neither working nor trying to find work?
Well, I think my question is, how is it fair that the rest of us are going to be asked to subsidize things like the Trump tax cuts that aren't paid for, that creates $3.5 trillion to the deficit over the next 10 years? Republicans have no problem doing that, but now they want to say we want to try to do something about the debt ceiling by taking health care, by making it harder for people to be able to get food, a basic, just fundamental thing that you need to get through your life. I'm sorry, but I'm not buying their argument either.
Okay. The polling on this, though, is a little different, right? Axios polling, 63% of Americans requiring Medicaid or Medicaid SNAP recipients to show proof of work to receive benefits. 66% of independents, 49% of Democrats, not surprising, 80% of Republicans. I'm trying to figure out, Scott, the political calculation by Democrats on something that is popular with independents and being so adverse to it.
Well, it's something that obviously their core primary voting wing really supports. It's something that House leaders, Senate leaders, and President Biden has pushed both on their campaign in 2020 and in recent, fights over the last couple of years. But it is interesting. The polling's pretty clear. Whether you look at the Axios Ipsos one, whether you look at Gallup or anything like this, anytime you ask the question or variation of it, should you require people to work who get these type of benefits, the vast majority of people, usually between 55 and 65%, say they want some sort of work requirements. Now, there's a debate about exactly what they are, but it is a bipartisan supported issue.
Well, it's also something that Joe Biden, as senator, voted for as well, just to put out there. I guess this is the question, though, right? And we're looking at this negotiation that's happening here in Washington. All of a sudden, are Democrats a little surprised that Kevin McCarthy got a bill passed and has pressured Joe Biden in a way on this that he really didn't think he was going to be pressured by?
Well, I think you just said the right word there. Negotiation. Everything that we're seeing right now, it's posturing. Some of it's theater. Some of it will never actually come to see fruition at all. It's hard to evaluate how this plays out until we actually know what the ending is. And I think, again, back to Scott's point about some of the polling, if you go and look at a little bit deeper, some of these polls also tell you that when Americans find out the details about some of these things, they're actually not as popular. They don't necessarily support the idea of creating more bureaucracy, more red tape so people have access to things like SNAP benefits or Medicaid. So, again, it's a fight that's going to to play out, but it's not.
Figure out sort of what it is. Let me just bring in Kevin McCarthy real quick. Hi, Kevin McCarthy. No, this was a soundbite from him on Wednesday.
On work requirements, you'd accept not anything of any consequence. Where does that?
I don't understand anything that has consequence. This is a senator who voted for work requirements. Listen, I think when you're sitting in the room and you're listening to the American public, why wouldn't he want to help people get out of poverty?
Politics is perception, Scott. The fact that Joe Biden now has to negotiate, has that changed the dynamics?
It certainly has. The interesting thing to me is we haven't seen a lot of polling in the last 7 days as the negotiations have started, because if you remember the last couple of months, they haven't been even talking. So it appears that the Democrats think that the Republicans are going to just push everyone off a cliff. We'll see what the polling says if we actually solve it or not, but it certainly looks like they're caving, and maybe they've seen some polling I haven't, but it's certainly a stance change.
And we did this for the past 2 weeks. Every time we get to one of these cliffs of one point or another, okay, it is always Republicans who get blamed, invariably, and they're the ones who end up getting shellacked in the next election for it. Democrats don't seem that certain this time around that that's the way it would work.
Well, I've always been in the mindset that in stuff like this is like a plague on both your houses. If for some insane reason we end up defaulting, which would be economically cataclysmic in my opinion, that's something that's just going to be so profound and so that everyone's going to get blamed across the board. Everyone at the table gets blamed when things go wrong. I think Republicans at times have been on the other end of this because they've made a bigger deal about things like shutting down the government. And I mean, Scott and I, when we worked on Capitol, we saw this parade play out year after year after year. It was always the same song and dance. And I think that's why I think in the American people's mind, they associate this type of battle a little bit more with Republicans because they've been more chest thumping about it. But this time, I think everyone loses if this thing goes down bad.
Okay, we're 18 months away from an election. Does this really matter more in the primaries for Republicans and Democrats who are going to have to face primary challenges on how they vote on this versus in the general?
Yeah, absolutely. It affects what's going to happen in the next 6 to 12 months. Whether it affects 18 months is if there is a default, is there a lasting affecting the economy, which we knew the economy is going to be a big issue. But I looked to the last time we had a government shutdown under President Trump. Everyone thought that was going to be the end of everybody. And 12 months after that, we all forgot about it. In fact, I'm sure I'm reminding some people that there was.
Or 12 hours after.
Yeah, 12 hours.
Forgot about it.
And that could be a problem with the debt ceiling because there are a lot of Republicans now versus 10 years ago in the polling who don't necessarily believe it's that big of a deal, which is a huge difference than when we were doing these things 10 years ago and going over these cliffs.
That's a great point. Gentlemen, good to see you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.